Good morning, everyone. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be with you today. My name is Justin Reamer. I am the CEO of Emissions Reduction Alberta. And with my very trusted partner and colleague, Laura Kilcrease, CEO of Alberta Innovates, we are pleased to have you attend this fantastic panel of Alberta's trailblazing journey in emissions reduction, clean technology innovation, and sustainable prosperity. Laura is going to help moderate this panel for us today, and following the panel, we're going to have a special announcement made by the Minister, and then we're going to invite you all downstairs for lunch. So you got to stay to the end to hear the announcement to get the lunch, just so you know. But thank you all for showing up today, and Laura, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. We're really so happy you're here. We're going to take a little different format that you might have seen from some of the other panels. While that format is very good, we're going to have a conversation amongst ourselves. And we hope in this conversation you're going to bring out any particular points that you'll remember. And I'm going to encourage you afterwards, given the limited time, to talk to the individuals about what you may wish to know more about. But let me just kick it off. We have on this panel clearly big industry that's highly innovative, and they're highly innovative in the clean tech area, not just for how we're going to make the world cleaner and emissions further reduced, but how they're going to use this to increase business and opportunities for themselves and others. Along with our industry partners, we of course have Minister Schultz. Thank you so much, Minister, who not just with what she's doing in the Minister of Environmental and Protected Lands, but is also helping big industry through the TIER Fund and what other factors in terms of policy factors that are going to be important that enable industry to go further, faster. So I'm going to throw it open to our floor. I will pick on people if they don't say anything, and say, hey, tell us who you are, who you're with, and then tell us what you're doing for emission reduction in the clean tech world that's coming out of Alberta today. Rona.
Laura, I sat at this end, so I didn't have to go first. Come on.
But you're so good.
So I'm Rona Delfrari. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Cenovus Energy, and Cenovus is a Canadian-based oil and natural gas company. We also have assets in the United States and some in Asia Pacific, for those who don't know us. And I have the most exciting role at the company, I think, because besides the sustainability role, I also work with all of our stakeholders, and that includes Indigenous communities. And one of the things that excites me the most about some of the technology developments that we're pursuing is that there's opportunity for Indigenous communities that live in the areas where we work to get involved, and we're already seeing that when it comes to environmental improvements over the years. We've been able to work with Indigenous communities, work with them to start businesses. Some of the examples are for our land reclamation. We work with Indigenous communities to go out there in advance before we even start a project, collect seeds, give us some advice, and they've started businesses from that. And I think that as we're progressing technologies, some of the technologies that we're working with partners here, Alberta Innovates, Emissions Reduction Alberta, technologies like small modular reactors. Into the future, potentially, there could be opportunities for even more partnerships with those Indigenous communities, and that makes me really excited about my role.
And if I can add to that and say, give a shout out to AIOC, which is here. Thank you, hands up. So very proud that the province set up a multi-billion-dollar loan guarantee fund to not just work with the Indigenous folks, but actually allow them to get equity in what everyone's doing. What a novel approach. They've bought in, they have ownership, they're a full participant. Rona, so incredibly important.
It is, and when I go to our communities, the first thing, and I introduce myself, and I know most of them now, but the first thing that the chief and council and the leaders in those communities say to me is, how can we do business with your company? And I think that that's not often the story that you hear for people that don't have the opportunity to have interactions with some of the Indigenous communities in our operating areas. You don't envision that as being their first question. And hands down every single community. That's the first thing they ask, and we're really happy about that. So Synovus, last year alone, we spent $1 million every day with Indigenous businesses. That's just last year alone. And so, and we're looking to do even more going forward. And again, coming back to this panel, a lot of that has to do with technology development. Those are where the opportunities are. I see in Alberta, the next boom in the oil and gas sector is going to be carbon capture and storage and other decarbonization efforts. And I think that that's something that is very aligned, looking after the environment, with the Indigenous communities. So there's great opportunities for the Indigenous communities to work with us on our decarbonization journey. I'm excited about it.
Wow, another opportunity to continue partnering for good. Heather, tell us more about what you're doing at GE.
Great. Good morning. My name's Heather Chalmers. I'm the president and CEO for GE in Canada. I'm also responsible for international markets for our GE Vernova business. And GE Vernova is our portfolio of energy companies. And that portfolio, and it's relevant here, is our power. So think about hydropower, steam power, nuclear power, gas power. We also have a wind portfolio, onshore wind, offshore wind. We have an electrification business, all things grid, battery storage, and then we have a digital business. And a lot of that focus right now is how do we optimize the grid as I always say it's the heart, or the arteries and veins of our power sector. We think that there's tremendous opportunity in Canada, not just to lead in terms of its own energy transition to net zero, but how do we do it in a way that serves as a best practice for the rest of the world to follow? And I think, very germane to this discussion, there's a couple of technologies that we're very excited about, specifically in Alberta. And you mentioned it, carbon capture and sequestration. No surprise to many in this room that you're sitting on wonderful geology and existing infrastructure in order to advance that probably faster than most places in the world. And so we're very active in terms of trying to develop a project so that we can learn the entire ecosystem around CCUS and then translate those best practices, get the cost curve down so you can see that you get the benefits of decarbonization. And the follow-on to that is direct air capture, which ultimately will be an industry in and of itself, which Alberta can benefit from. And then the second technology that we're very excited about, and you mentioned it, thank you very much, is small modular nuclear reactors. And for those who may not know, we are building the world's first Western small modular nuclear reactor with Ontario Power Generation. And the plan is to build a fleet of 4. Sask Power is also interested in it as well, and we've got some other opportunities. And those are for grid scale. But when we think about Alberta, there's the opportunity for that for grid as well as for industrial purposes. So we're, in a nutshell, I would say we're super excited about Canada, and in particular the opportunities in Alberta, and to work with technology and industry partners like we've got up on the stage here.
So Heather, I'm going to ask you one stage further. Often the general public feels that there's one new technology for innovation, for energy transition, or one new thing. And my belief is it's going to be a series of different innovative technologies, nuclear, wind, solar, many other things. Tell us what you think.
I 100% agree. The reality is, in order to get to net zero, it's solving for that trilemma of sustainability, but you also have to do it in a reliable and an affordable way. And I always say those puzzle pieces coming together to solve for that is going to look very different depending on where you are. And Canada, this is another place where Canada can lead because our systems are so unique. Think about Quebec, where today it's very much hydroelectric power generation. And they are embarking upon a ton of refurbishment of those hydroelectric plants. That's another place where Canada is going to lead in terms of innovation. That's very unique and different than what Ontario is dealing with, which is a lot of nuclear, wind, gas generation. So though you said it, there is no one silver bullet. It's all about how do we advance new technologies, but also work with what we've got, the assets that we have today, and how do you get more productivity and optimize those existing assets.
Thank you. Tamara, founder and CEO of Synergraze. Tell us more.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here today at this United Nations Climate Change Conference and to be part of this panel. My name is Tamara Loisel, and I am the founder and CEO of Synergraze, a biotech company where we are working to reduce methane emissions from cattle. There's a good chance that many people here today have heard about the connection between greenhouse gases and cattle. And indeed, cattle belch methane. It's a byproduct of their digestive systems. And this type of methane is called enteric methane. And reducing methane is a big focus for climate change mitigation because not only is methane 28 times more potent as a heat-trapping gas than carbon dioxide over 100 years, it's 80 times more potent over 20 years. And the amount of methane from cattle is significant. Nearly 1/3 of all global methane comes from cattle. And at Synergraze, we are commercializing a natural, algae-based cattle feed additive that is capable of reducing methane, enteric methane, by up to 90%. Our research has led us to develop technologies that enable us to increase the bioactives concentration of a variety of species of algae and seaweeds that we then extract and turn into cattle feed additives. So we're really excited to be launching into the global marketplace in the next few months, and our solution is very cost effective. We're ready to scale quickly and capable of reducing enteric methane at gigaton scale.
This is fantastic, and I have to commend other people, not me, other people in the province that have already, Minister probably knows better than I, we've already met our methane reduction targets in Alberta 5-6 years ahead of time. And I'm so very proud we're continuing to actually meet these targets. But let me ask you a really direct question. In reaching this target, will it be cost effective for industry in what you're doing?
Yeah, our commercial scale demonstrations have shown that there are cost savings, particularly around feed costs, which is the number one cost to producers. And if we can reduce those even marginally, the economics and competitive edge for cattle producers goes up tremendously. And our commercial demonstrations have shown that the cost of purchasing our additive is offset entirely by the feed cost savings.
So amazing. Emission reduction, clean world can actually make for additional profit. Isn't that nice? Mark, moving on to you.
I don't know how I top belching cattle and do better than that, but I'll give it a shot. I'm Mark Poesk. I'm the CEO of NMAX. NMAX is an electric power utility based in Calgary. We have operations in Alberta and eastern United States. We're unique in Calgary, or in Alberta, where we operate across the entire value chain. So we have a generation fleet that bids into the wholesale market in Alberta. We have a retail business. We're the largest retailer in Alberta. And then we have a regulated wires business in Alberta. And maybe for the kind of non-Canadians in the audience, just want to give some context on the electricity system in Canada, actually. It is a bit of the envy of the world from a clean perspective. 83% of the electricity produced in Canada is non-emitting today. Since 2005, we've reduced the emissions by 50% out of the electricity system in Canada, primarily in Alberta and in Ontario, converting from coal generation to gas. We'll be shutting down the last coal generation plant in Alberta later this year. And NMAX alone, we've reduced our emissions by 65% since 2015 by converting from coal to gas and building out wind renewables. So, it's actually through the investments from Alberta Innovates and the ERA that has really helped us to get there. We're a relatively small utility on the kind of global scale of things, so it's super important for us to get support in innovative ways of doing it. And because we operate across the entire value chain, what we do on the generation side is quite different than what we do on the wire side to reduce emissions. And so things like on the generation side, and Heather was a partner in this, is we built and developed the first hybrid gas battery powered generating station in Canada, in Alberta. Relatively small utility, again, remember, and was through supports of the organizations like Alberta Innovates and ERA that we could do that. On our Shepherd plant, which is a thermal gas combined cycle gas generation plant, we have, I think, probably the only one in the world.
One of only two.
One of only two in the world, which is a carbon conversion technology center, which essentially was built by Alberta Innovates, a sub of Alberta Innovates, takes the flue gases off our combined cycle plant and becomes a lab for anybody in the world to come and test their technologies and their abilities. And I understand when it first came up, it didn't have a lot of utilization. Now there's a queue and a lineup to get into the lab. So it shows you kind of how that technology is innovative and is moving, and how visionary in building that lab it was. And then, again, through ERA funding and through NRCan, we're doing a FEED study on carbon capture on our combined cycle plant in Calgary. It's the largest combined cycle and newest combined cycle plant in Canada, the cleanest, least emitting plant. But we know if we want to get to net zero, we're going to have to do something, and carbon capture is part of that future. So we're doing studies right now to implement carbon capture on that facility. If I kind of switch over to the wire side of the business, part of what I view our role is enabling the energy transition of our customers to be able to tie to the grid. We're going to clean up the grid, the supply side, and our customers need to tie to that. So we're doing a bunch of things there as well. Again, through support mechanisms and partnerships. We deployed the first ever in North America grid scale solar, but we did it on the secondary side of distribution. So normally when you do grid scale solar, you tie it into transmission or at the higher voltage, but we figured out a way to do it on the kind of downstream side, on the customer side, and built it on the roof of a mall in Calgary, and we're feeding the grid back through the distribution system back up to the bulk electric system. EV charging, we're piloting kind of a microsystem of solar, battery, and EV charging stations where they'll be kind of self-contained, that they can self-charge themselves and charge vehicles and batteries. So it's less of a draw on the grid, and we don't have to invest in much as in wires. So, I'm quite proud of the work that NMAX has done over the years we're a municipal-owned utility, fairly small in the grand scale of things, but we've managed through support mechanisms to really take some innovative firsts for the industry.
That's fantastic. And if I can pick up on one of your points, and that's the carbon conversion tech center just outside Calgary, available to anyone in this room who wants to test what they're doing, number one, but could not be done without the government of Alberta actually putting up the first 10 million of this $30 million plant. And I think it's so important when we get our public officials and our policy aligned to actually seed these issues before industry steps in to take their risk. We'll take that pre-risk that the private equity markets tend not to be happy to do. So Minister Schultz, given the investments you're making in these type of activities, could you address that a little bit more of how government's stepping up to get at the front end to enable industry?
Sure, and I know we're going to get to an exciting announcement in a little bit. Of course, we're making you all listen to this panel before we get to the punchline here today. But I do have to say, it's just such an exciting time to be in this role as Minister of Environment with all of the amazing things that are going on. And Alberta is proud to not only currently be a global leader when it comes to energy production and emissions reduction, but we are continuing to pave the way, and we have been for a long time. When we look back at our history in Alberta, I don't know if everybody here knows this, and I know we've got some folks in the room who are outside of Alberta, including one of my favorite environment ministers from the other side of the country, from the amazing province of Newfoundland, Bernie Davis. Thank you for joining us today. But I don't know if all of you know this, that we introduced the first climate strategy in Canada. We were the first jurisdiction in North America to put a price on industrial emissions. We have been recognized both nationally, internationally for the work that we have done on methane emissions reduction and monitoring, which is amazing. I mean, when we're talking about methane, our example from just a couple weeks ago, we did hit our target. It wasn't quite 6 years ahead of schedule. It was 3. But that's a big deal. And, you know, we often talk about you know, sometimes, and for those of you who are not from Alberta, sometimes we're seen as maybe a little rogue. We like to do things our own way. But, you know, why we like to do that is because we were able to hit our methane emissions reduction targets of 45% from 2014. That was our 2025 goal. We were able to do it 3 years ahead of schedule and for $600 million less cost to industry than if we had done it the way that, and no offense to our federal friends, but if we had followed their path and their framework, it would have cost industry $600 million more to get there. So we take a bit of a different approach where, of course, we have policy pieces and regulatory pieces that we put in place, but we really do think that these investments are absolutely necessary in de-risking some of the projects and technologies that we're seeing come online. That is, I think, why we're so proud of our TIER program, where, you know, obviously, for those of you in Alberta, you know all about it, but for those of you who aren't, it is a levy on our heavy emitters that we've committed to then invest right back in to emissions reduction technology and innovation, and it's working. So, you know, when now we look at, yes, methane, we hit our targets. Electricity, we are 53% reduced emissions in electricity since 2005. That's a huge deal. That is exceptional leadership. And we often say, I mean, your first question was around, is there one technology we're most excited about? I don't think government is ever really great at picking and choosing technology innovations and making business decisions, but that's what you both are for through emissions reduction on Alberta and Alberta Innovates. But we have invested $2.6 billion into technology and innovation so far through TIER. And for us, it's not about an either or. We want to continue to see our energy industry provide what the world needs. But I mean, if you've heard me or our premier talking this week, you know that we care about everything from renewables to geothermal to small modular nuclear to hydrogen to biofuels, biomass, CCUS, where we want to continue to be a leader. And so I guess summing that up, that's why I'm just so grateful to be in this role at this time that I think is so important for the future, not only of our province, but all of our major industries and worldwide.
Thank you. You know, again, not just important for a clean world, but important for driving economic output. So if I could kind of just ask the panel generally, and I'm going to jump around, you know, what can we share with other regions, both in Canada and other parts of the world, that they can learn from us that will help them succeed in balancing the environment and their economic issues all at the same time? Heather, thought? Oh, Mark. Mark was eager to go. Mark.
Well, maybe I'll just pick up on the TIER and other things like that. I think one of the lessons I've learned, I worked 25 years in BC, at BC Hydro, you know, totally different construct. I was 4 years in Ontario, and now I'm in Alberta. And what I've kind of learned about Alberta, and you know, it's a similar story on getting off of coal. We did it years ahead of time for much cheaper than, say, Ontario, who today even still has a $5 billion global adjustment on their price of electricity every year because of the way they did it. Alberta does it with a kind of allows business to do it, creates the right incentives and the right kind of atmosphere for business to do it, and allows kind of the markets to drive it, and it works. And so the example on the TIER is, as the carbon price goes up, and you know, all the things I talked about that NMAX is doing, you know, we're doing those for kind of altruistic reasons, and we want to kind of help, and we want to get to net zero. But there's also good business sense in it. As the carbon tax, the TIER price goes up, we bid into a wholesale market against renewables that bid in at $0 at some hours. And so you know, if we're paying $150 or $170 carbon tax, you know, at the end, it's just good business. If I could get to net zero tomorrow and deploy carbon capture tomorrow, I would do that because the market drivers are there to do that. And so, you know, I think it is a good lesson, and I've worked in multiple jurisdictions, like I said, that when you try to do it through regulations, it doesn't allow the innovation, doesn't allow companies, doesn't allow the markets to really drive kind of the outcomes that you're looking for. You got to send the right market signals, and business will figure it out and do it.
Heather, thoughts?
Maybe I'll double down on the small modular reactor because it's very new technology that the world is literally watching what's happening at Ontario Power Generation. And in terms of tying those environmental goals to the economic goals, I would talk about two things. Number one, without question, as we're building this, we're creating a supply chain that is going to, you know, at some point export to the rest of the world, whether that's hard goods or talent. You know, a perfect example is we've already hired 100 nuclear engineers, and we are in the process of trying to hire 100 more in order to get this first program off the ground. All those people are going to be in Canada, and that is talent that will be the envy of the rest of the world, along with the supply chain. I think the other thing that becomes exportable is how we've done it. And in this case, there's what's called the common design. And we've got 4 partners that are working with us on building this common design. And the idea is that it's literally rinse and repeatable. You can build these small modular reactors and get that cost productivity that we've never really been able to get in nuclear because we tend to build what we call snowflakes or ones of a kind around the world. There's also the other the unique thing that we've done here that I think is translatable as well is the integrated delivery model. And we have 4 partners, so GE, Hitachi, Ontario Power Generation, Atkins, Realis, and I'm just drawing a blank on the 4th. We won't mention that. But, and it's a shared risk and reward model to ensure that we stay on time, on budget. And in all of these first-of-a-kind technologies, you know, doesn't matter how much planning you do up front, you're ultimately going to run into challenges and things that you didn't foresee. So having this type of collaborative approach in order to solving those problems it's unique, but it's what's going to be required, whether it's carbon capture, whether it's direct air capture, you name it. And this is something that we're really proud of, and I think the rest of the world is going to learn from.
Thank you, Heather. Rona, collaborative approach. Talk to us more.
I love talking about collaboration, my favorite. So I think that, you know, your question was how are we doing things differently in Alberta? And there's collaborative efforts globally, absolutely. But we are really good at it in Alberta. And maybe it's because, you know, we're a small group. We all kind of know each other in industry. We kind of usually get along, kind of like family maybe, get along. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But I want to talk about a couple of collaborative efforts. And I think that the important part about the collaboration and the innovation that we're doing is that we come with the attitude that when regarding emissions reductions, it doesn't make any sense to try and be competitive with this. And so, for example, with the small modular reactors, we've done a feasibility study for our oil sands operations, small modular reactors with Alberta Innovates. It's now public on our website and on your website. We're going ahead with the next stage, which is a FEED study with Emissions Reduction Alberta. That information will be public, you know, taking a little bit of business confidential, but because it doesn't make sense. We're not doing these things to have a competitive advantage on the technology. We want others to also pursue them. So biggest collaborative effort that I think maybe the province has ever undertaken is Cenovus and our 5 oil sands peers, which make up 95% of the oil sands production, Suncor, Canadian Natural Resources, Imperial, MEG, and ConocoPhillips Canada. We have now, we're about 3 years in, and we've embarked upon this massive information sharing and collaborative effort to get our oil sands production in Canada to net zero emissions by 2050, and we have very specific goals that we want to hit in 2030 and 2040. And we are all in on this. Our CEOs meet with them on the steering committee. The steering committee meets 3 times a week. Our CEOs join us every Friday. So I think if you really, usually it's if you want to move fast, do it alone. In this case, absolutely not, because these are multi-billion-dollar projects. The main project that we're progressing right now is a very large carbon capture and storage project. It would be the largest in the world as we progress it. We're doing, it's called the Pathways Alliance because we have multiple pathways, dozens and dozens of technologies underway. But these are high risk, very large, high risk as far as the economics of them and the fact that a lot of these projects have never been done at this scale. So we need to do it together. We can actually move faster that way. It's the most exciting thing to be a part of because we are going to get this done. We're working with governments. We're working with other organizations. We're working out the details, I would say, but the plan is there. It's a legitimate plan. You can check it out on pathwaysalliance.ca. And we're already progressing some of the projects, and we've already had emissions reductions. We've spent just over the last 3 years, $1.8 billion already as our companies on emissions reductions in the oil sands. And this is just the start. There's going to be billions more, and it's going to bring, back to your value, it's going to bring greater economic value to the province because that money is being invested in the province. Some of the technologies are from around the world and across Canada, but it's happening in Alberta. And so that's the win for the economy, it's the win for climate and for our environment, and it's the win for our companies because this is going to help ensure that we are able to be the global provider of oil for decades to come because there's still going to be the need for oil, and we see the value. We can be low cost, and if we get to, we will, I shouldn't say if, when we get to net zero emissions, then it only makes sense that it's coming from our operations.
And I think that's a big difference from perhaps some other geolocations who may pay lip service to this and have a good intent, but they're not putting, I think the 1.8 billion, while it sounds a lot of money, I actually think that's less important than I'm going to ask this question, Rona, which, Rona, is, I hear you kind of meet fairly regularly on this, and the kind of people that meet, tell us a little bit more about how serious they are.
Yeah, you hear sometimes criticism that industry is not going fast enough, but these are very large projects, and they take time. Like any major project, the very first stage of it has to be about the research and the analysis and making sure you're doing it right. And then the next stage, you're full on into construction and then operation. But yeah, we have hundreds of our staff members working on this. If we weren't serious about doing it, we wouldn't be spending hours of our time as executives every single week working on it, and our staff are so excited about it. It is thrilling to be part of something that is truly, we hope, could be a model for any sector globally on collaboration between competing companies. We still compete in a lot of other ways. We're not completely friends on that, but when it comes to emissions reductions, we're not competing.
And I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I understand the CEOs of Pathways Alliance not just put their commitment there in terms of industry, but actually spend their time weekly.
They do. Yeah, we meet with them every Friday morning, 7 a.m. And, they hold each other accountable for making sure that their companies are progressing the projects. And we, as steering committee members, do. And I think you really need that direction from the top, or else these announcements sometimes come out and companies have the best intentions, but they start to lose steam. This can't lose steam. When your CEOs or executive chairs are committing their own time every single week, and we're doing that as executive team members, this can't lose steam.
Right. Tamara, your industry is somewhat different, and it's more, fractionated in terms of what you're doing. How do you form collaborations within this industry for what you're trying to achieve with methane reduction?
We have a couple of different collaborations at different different points along our supply chain. So one is at our production level. We have a collaboration with a First Nation. Our primary ingredient is seaweed and algae. So we have a First Nation that is on the ocean, has lots of ocean territory. So we work collaboratively with them for facility and seaweed harvesting. And at the other end, we also have a collaboration with commercial feedlot operators, where they are implementing the product, and we get to see the results and fine-tune the dosing and things like that. So yeah, there's a number of different areas for collaboration, and we've also been a recipient of ERA funding, and we've been incredibly grateful for that, and it's allowed us to really build our scientific team, buy equipment, really increase our rate of getting to market. So it's been a great program.
That's great. And it really only goes to show that different industries undertake what they're trying to do in different ways. So please, lesson to take away is there is not one way. It's the way you, with your industries, want to do this. I'm very quickly going to move this because we're going to have a special announcement from the Minister in, about 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Is that okay? Yeah. So in a quick, one last thing from each of you on the panel. Is there one last thing you want to tell the audience that they should think about, they should keep an eye on? What might that be? A technology, a business line, a collaboration, whatever that might be. Mark?
Sure, I think it's picking up on what you said. There is no silver bullet. Like we need all the above, all the technologies, all the innovations, and you have to understand there are regional differences in Canada and regional differences across the globe on what's available to those regions to achieve a net zero future. And I think Alberta's doing a great job of exploring all of the opportunities and the resources we have available to us.
Tamara?
One thing I would say is looking out for the ag space and producers, cattle producers, who have been really subject to a lot of torment in the last couple of years, really now have the opportunity to make great leaps and bounds, strides in reducing methane emissions, but also other types of emissions on farm. And I think that's really going to take off in the next year or two.
Right. Heather?
I maybe less technology related or financing related, because we tend to talk a lot about that. But I'm spending more and more time on how do we accelerate permitting and regulatory harmonization and make that a competitive advantage for Canada. It's one thing to have all of your whether it's tax or like production tax credits or otherwise set up, but if you can't get these projects done and they're taking too long, you're not going to get the investment dollars. So this is a big area I think that we have an opportunity in if we focus on it.
And aligned to that, I would say that many of these decarbonization projects have different risk profiles than what our corporations are used to assessing to put capital into. And so I think that it's important to have co-investments with governments to get these going. And it's important for our investors and lenders and creditors to really reward those companies that are truly taking action and to maybe take a different look at, we're taking some risk here, but it's important because it's for a common goal.
Fantastic answers, thank you. I have to pass this back. Oh, please.
Sorry, I'm about to hog the microphone for, 5 minutes or whatever, but I did shorten that speech, so I do just want to touch on, you're welcome, a politician who likes a short one, not a long one. But I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration that you heard from all of these panelists, because I do think that's actually what makes us unique. Yes, these investments in helping to de-risk, but it's also collaboration. We're working to reduce emissions, but we also want to make sure that we have secure, reliable, affordable affordable, and especially when I look at our major industries, we want safe energy production as well, which I think is also a very key piece. I think about that when I think about CCUS, when I think about methane emissions reduction. It's important that we're looking at all of those aspects, and that's why I think what we've done when it comes to, I mean, we have a hydrogen center of excellence. We are investing in the CCUS Knowledge Center. I'm also looking to make sure, oh, Beth, look at you raising your hand. That's very good, because every time you do that, I give you a shout out. Look at her, she's very smart. And you know, the other thing though is I want to position Alberta as a geothermal hub. I mean, I was in Germany watching, again, an amazing Calgary company in geothermal setting up their first commercial pilot. They were originally funded through Emissions Reduction Alberta, and now they've received some dollars through some federal programs as well. This is amazing. We have so much to be proud of. We have, you know, when it comes to CCUS, we already have 11.5 million tons of emissions safely and permanently stored underground. You know, we sit at some of these panels, and I have heard people say, you know, if in the 2030s we can get the infrastructure built to store some of our emissions, we'll have net zero cement. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like part of it is our geology, but part of it is our amazing people. And honestly, the skilled people, and much of that comes from our energy industry, and is now trying to really pave the path forward in a whole variety of exciting new ways. I mean, I also look at, we had the methane mitigation conference, we had, I think it was Biofuels West conference, just in Alberta in the fall, carbon capture conference. Like, we are a hub where people are coming to see what other places are doing and to share our knowledge because we know it's in the best interest of everybody, as Rona said. Sorry, thanks for letting me add that plug.
Minister, you can have the microphone anytime, but in order to honor my partner in crime, and that's Justin Reimer of ERA, along with myself, Alberta, from Alberta Innovates, where we work together so closely, I would ask Justin if you could please go forward to introduce the minister properly for the announcement.
Sure. Thank you, panelists, so much for that engaging conversation. Thank you, guests, for attending today. So before we break for lunch, as mentioned, we have a very special announcement. We've spoken to you about some policies, some strategies, some projects that are helping Alberta make remarkable progress in both reducing emissions, advancing clean technology, and boosting economic growth and jobs. It's not or, it's and. And we hope that on its own that would leave you inspired. But without further ado, I'd like to ask our Minister, Rebecca Schultz, who has done a fantastic job promoting this province and the fantastic work we're doing around emissions reduction and energy development, and ask her to share a few words with us today about a funding announcement for both Alberta Innovates and Emissions Reduction Alberta.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justin, and just thank you to both of you for the exceptional work that you're doing over the last 6 months that I've been in this role. This is something that I have become to be very proud of and excited by, and it's because of the great work that you're doing with all of our partners across our province. So we've all heard a lot about innovation over the last couple of days, and there are some absolutely fascinating projects underway, and I know that there is even more innovation to come. So after days of debating and discussing all of these very cool projects and innovations, and really a lot about the path forward, it is exciting to be here to have not only this panel focused totally on Alberta, a leader in innovation in Canada. And I just have to say once again, I know I said it already, but I can tell you I'm so proud to be the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas for the province of Alberta at such an important time as this. And I'm so grateful for all of the folks who came before me and all of you who are working so hard, because you've really created this place where our province is a leader in reducing emissions and driving innovations. I don't believe that there is anywhere in the world that has the same critical ingredients all in one place to advance technologies and really reduce emissions, especially in energy and industrial sectors. From a talent pool with deep expertise, prime locations for pilot projects, and concentrated clusters of industrial activity. I think that's why we've seen so much on the go, from hydrogen to CCUS, from methane mitigation to renewable energy, and of course far beyond that, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. We know that there is work left to do. We have to keep innovating, to keep inventing, and keep investing in these types of projects. That's why I'm happy to take a moment to announce that through Emissions Reduction Alberta, we're investing more than $31 million into 9 new projects that will help reduce global emissions and keep driving innovation forward. Over the last year, we've invested hundreds of millions in tier funding into a wide range of projects and areas, from hydrogen and studying the feasibility of SMRs to energy efficiency programs and industrial transformation. Today, we are adding energy storage and bitumen beyond combustion to that list. 4 of these projects will help improve our electricity system by integrating new low-carbon technologies. That includes funding to help TransAlta complete the largest battery energy storage system in Alberta, significantly increasing the energy storage capacity connected to our grid. Another 5 projects will focus on another 4 projects, there's a total of 5 there, will focus on turning bitumen into carbon fiber, helping show that using bitumen in new and different ways has huge potential to help reduce emissions, diversify our economy, and of course, explore new markets. Some of these projects are pre-commercialization, some are testing and demonstrating what's possible, and others are now being operationalized. In every single case, we're helping to de-risk important projects for our critical partners. These are 9 exciting projects, but they're far from unique. So today's $31 million is part of the more than $1.5 billion that's been invested into your programming since just 2019. Now, there is a lot more to come because Alberta, again, is a prime investment destination. It is the home of exceptional innovators and risk takers. These incredibly talented Albertans contributing to this amazing tech sector with an optimism and entrepreneurial spirit that really put us on the map as an energy powerhouse and will continue to keep us on the map as a leader as we move forward. So thank you so much for coming today. Huge congratulations to all the successful funding recipients. And I'm going to pass it back on to Justin now to outline the technical details of this and add some more details about the projects.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you so much, Minister. It's always a pleasure doing funding announcements with you. You keep me on my toes with your communications prowess. ERA is pleased to support our continued investment in game-changing technologies that will lead to future materials, energy systems, and markets. And we are so grateful to the funding from the Government of Alberta to work in collaboration with other partners in the innovation system, such as my friend Laura at Alberta Innovates. I can't emphasize enough the importance of the Carbon Fiber Challenge and Bitumen Beyond Combustion initiative that Alberta Innovates is leading. We have the godfather of bitumen beyond combustion here, my friend John Zhao. If you want more details on what's going on in that area, please seek him out afterwards. Carbon fiber derived from Alberta's bitumen is a significant opportunity for this province to diversify our natural resources, create jobs, open new markets, and grow the economy. And encouraging research in this field is a first key step to unlocking those enormous opportunities. So Minister mentioned I want to go into a little bit more detail. So the projects we're funding include Carbomat. They're developing a technology to produce low-cost, high-value carbon fibers from low-waste byproducts from oil sands asphaltenes. Enlighten Innovations, their technology removes impurities in oil that make it unsuitable as a precursor for carbon fiber. This is an important step to turn oil asphaltenes into carbon fiber and then open up new value-added markets in Alberta's natural resources. Thread Innovations. This project is all about scalability, viability, and consistency of low-cost, efficient processes for producing carbon fiber. Side note, there's a media opportunity in Alberta going on later today when they wake up. And one of the things I'm told is they have a hockey stick made out of carbon fiber from Alberta's bitumen. I have to say, I'm sorry to miss that. University of British Columbia is another funding recipient who's demonstrating a new melt spinning process to produce pre-commercial amounts of carbon fiber from Alberta bitumen. Outside of the Carbon Fiber Challenge co-funding, we're investing in 4 other projects. Nanos Tech, which is using a novel technology to provide enhanced oil recovery and improve the efficiency of oil extraction. PIP Lethbridge, which is demonstrating thermal energy storage to utilize waste heat and help decarbonize food processing facility. Solartility, which is a trial for a co-located solar array and livestock operations to uncover approaches to optimize land use using agrivoltaics. And TransAlta, who is demonstrating battery storage at a hydroelectric dam near Cochrane, Alberta. It is expected to be the largest battery energy storage project in Alberta. These projects announced today will deliver annual GHG reductions of 280,000 tons, cumulative reductions of almost 2 million tons by 2030, and 7 million tons by 2050. That last amount is equivalent to taking 2 million cars off the road. The other economic impact is also just as very important. 600 person-year jobs in Alberta have more than $200 million in GDP impact to the province by 2025. At ERA, we are anchored in the belief that success is measured in both economic and environmental outcomes, and that reducing GHG emissions is core to what we do, and we need to attribute everything to that. But we also need to foster the benefits to the province in the form of new products, new companies, new jobs. And this funding accomplishes both things. I'm going to ask another key member of our village that raises these technology commercialization projects in unison as a collaborative effort in the province, Laura Kilcrease, to say a few more words.
Well, I have to give great credit to the people on my team. It's not me, I'm just a representative of them. And we have several of those folks in the room, but one I'd particularly like to recognize is Dr. John Zhao. John, would you please stand up for a second? John is indeed the godfather of BBC, not my BBC with my accent, his BBC, bitumen beyond combustion. And I think this will actually enhance both the economic and emission reduction in the world to a level that I don't even think we yet fully realize. We measure this in small amounts of product today, but we are going to be measuring it in not just billions, but hundreds of billions per year in just a very short amount of time. A short amount of time relative to how innovation grows. But we again do it with all our partners, and many of the partners here have worked with us on this. It's only one of the technologies, as Minister mentioned. We also run the Hydrogen Centre for Excellence, as Mark mentioned, the carbon capture plant. I could go on, but I have a feeling if I'm between you and lunch, it would be a problem. And I am in that spot today. So all I ask of you all is to work with the people you've heard from and each other so that together we can get to our clean goals in an economically viable and strong environment together. So from Emissions Reduction Alberta, Alberta Innovates, our Minister, thank you, our friends and colleagues in industry, yourselves for being here. Now my challenge to you is, don't talk about it. Go make it happen. Connect downstairs. Please, downstairs for lunch. And I'd love to see the output of your positive collisions from this luncheon today. Thank you.